If you looked at these two probably most popular divers on AliExpress this year and wondered why they price so differently while being constructed from pretty much the same materials, well, you're not alone. And in this video we'll get into the nitty-gritty of differences between these two watches and we'll try to uncover if Pagani Design really worth the money or if San Martin really worth 2.5 times the asking price. So let's get into it. Hi and welcome to the channel. If you're already subscribed, thank you and very warm welcome back. And if you're new here, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. It does help us to bring you more reviews. There will be no scoring card today because I can tell you pretty much off the start which watch is better based on my personal subjective opinion, of course. The key question is it 2.5 times better as the price tag suggests? Along with the usual categories like dial, bracelet, movement and so on, we will also look at less tangible but nevertheless important in my opinion things like quality control and resale value. I know this might come as a bit of a shock, as some channel recently suggested that Pagani Design watches are practically disposable. Well, sorry to disappoint, it is not quite the case. To make things a bit more organized, I suggest we get the similarities out of the way first. They should be quick and save us some time with our comparison. So both watches have one sapphire crystal, including cyclope. They both have ceramic bezels, both have the same declared dimensions, 40mm diameter with 20mm lugs. We will look at the details of the measurements in a moment. Both have stainless steel construction and both have Seiko Instruments NH35A movement. So, based on the above, the clear winner should be, with much more economical price tag, Pagani Design. Well, not so fast. Now to the actual meat and potatoes of this video, the differences. Both companies ship very quickly these days, at least in my experience. The packaging is different, of course. Here is San Martin's and here is the Pagani Design one. I personally never had a Pagani Design watch arriving damaged due to their packaging, so even though it is not as protective as the hard shell of the San Martin's box, it is fit for purpose. I have to mention though that San Martin includes a set of quality tools, which is a nice touch for sure. And of course San Martin stamps and dates a 2-year warranty card, which Pagani Design never does, again in my experience. Why do I think it's important? Well, at least it means that someone opened the box before the shipment and had once over at the watch for some obvious quality control issues. Dimensions. Both watches have classic 40mm diameter with 20mm lugs. Actually, both bezels measure 40.5mm exactly if we want to be really pedantic. Lug to lug is about the same, 47.5mm for Pagani Design and 48mm for San Martin. And protruding end link to end link is 50.7mm for San Martin and 52.5mm for Pagani Design. Here we already see a subtle difference that will allow San Martin to sit more comfortably on the slimmer wrists. This is of course due to San Martin's slightly recessed end links. Both watches have almost the same case height of about 12.5mm, with Pagani Design being a fraction of a millimeter slimmer. This is kind of deceiving because on the wrist San Martin will look thinner. This is due to a thinner case profile, while still having that slightly protruding back case. Both watches weigh around the sweet spot for a diver watch. There is a slight difference in the weight. Adjusted to my about 7-inch wrist, San Martin weighs 152 grams and Pagani Design 144. This is most likely due to a more bulkier bracelet on San Martin, which we will examine in a moment. Crystal. As we established, both watches have sapphire crystal, including the cyclope, which is good. My personal preference is San Martin crystal implementation, it just looks more crisp. San Martin magnification factor is about 2.5 times, while Pagani Design one seems to be a bit stronger, which is noticeable if you put these two watches side by side. So I think this is a personal preference point rather than an advantage of either of the timepieces. San Martin claims to have some anti-reflective coating, I'm not sure though, however most likely due to a flat sapphire crystal, both watches are very legible anyway. Looking at the dial, this is where we will find more interesting points that set these two watches apart. First, Pagani Design decided to go with sunburst effect. I like the sunburst effect, it gives this watch a bit of personality. However, a deep piano black on San Martin seems a bit more at home, especially on the all-black color combination watch. This is definitely a matter of personal preference in my opinion. The wooding on the dial, well, here Pagani Design has some cleanup to do, and I think they should lose a line or two. So here my preference is definitely with San Martin, minimalistic and to the point. I know that San Martin applied hexagon logo is a bit polarizing. Personally, I prefer it to a printed one. Another interesting point of difference is the rehaut on these watches. Rehaut is the silvering between the dial and the crystal, while on Pagani Design it is almost vertical, on San Martin it is more at an angle. I personally prefer the Pagani Design more vertical rehaut, to be quite honest. Having said that, the angled rehaut on San Martin obviously wasn't a showstopper for me. To complete the discussion about the dial, we need to look at the hands. As we can see, they are very similar, with San Martin, in my personal humble opinion, again looking ever so slightly more elegant. And just before we move on, we need to address an elephant in the dial room, the lume. To be fair, this Pagani Design watch probably has the best lume out of all the other Pagani Design releases so far, and yet it is a far cry from outstanding PGW9 lume on San Martin. If we compare the bezels, at first glance, both watches use pretty much identical ceramic inserts, with San Martin having a slightly thicker font on the markings, which I also only picked up after putting these watches side by side. They also have different lume pip design, and I prefer San Martin's here, less chance of this pip being knocked off. Apart from the look, another key difference here is of course the bezel action. And this is my personal take on this. While I literally enjoy turning the San Martin 120 click precision field tool bezel with almost no backplay, I'm not as enthusiastic about operating a 60 click one on Pagani Design. It does the job. I can time my morning tea to brew for 4 minutes, but I would be worried to trust more important tasks to this bezel. The action sound is teeny and there is quite a backplay. Clearly Pagani Design cut some corners here, and in regards to quality control, with an obvious misalignment of Pagani Design bezel with the chaptering, something that I highlighted in my initial review of this watch, well, I still believe that the bezel needs to align. However, taking into account that Seiko can release an $1,200 watch with misaligned bezel, makes one wonder. So, whichever way you look at it, more brownie points here to San Martin. They actually paid attention, and this San Martin bezel is perfectly aligned. Both watches are powered by Seiko Instruments NH35A movements. I'm happy to report that both are well regulated, or at least these two watches that I have here. Here is Pagani Design on the time grapher, well within NH35 tolerances of -20 plus 40 seconds a day, and here is San Martin, in the same position on the time grapher, also performing quite well. As a matter of fact, in the day-to-day use, both watches are very accurate. Moving on to the case, Pagani Design case looks a bit more chunkier, and personally I think it has few things going for it. For example, I prefer the see-through back case and a bit more sportier lines of Pagani Design case flanks. However, when it comes to finish, it seems that San Martin has a slight edge. Maybe because there are less shiny surface areas, but San Martin polishing seems a bit of a higher quality. Again, this is only evident if you really examine the two side by side, and also if you know what you're looking at. I also prefer San Martin shark on the crown. I have to admit it is not as prominent as it looks on product pictures on AliExpress, but still it is more interesting than Pagani Design's logo in my opinion. Of course, this is quite subjective, and a fair argument will be that Pagani Design is actually more consistent with their branding, while San Martin used shark on the crown, hexagon on a dial, and writing on a clasp, to which we will get in a moment. Both watches have screw-on back cases and screw-down crowns. Of course, we have 200 meters of water resistance declared by San Martin, as opposed to 100 meters on Pagani Design watch. My guess would be that a see-through back might have been a factor that prompted Pagani Design to be more conservative here. Pagani Design 100 meter water resistance will still allow for this watch to be used during swimming. However, in case if you're thinking of diving with your watch, then only San Martin has the specs for it between these two watches. Bracelets. When it comes to quality, design and engineering, San Martin is simply on a different level here in my opinion. Working our way from end links to the clasp, we can see the difference. Starting with the end links, San Martin has a well-defined, slightly recessed end links which keep the end-to-end distance almost by 2 mm shorter, allowing for a better wrist fit and making transition from case to the bracelet smoother. The link and connections between the links are well done and done with very tight tolerances. We can see how little play there is in the bracelet, and yet all the links bend freely and smoothly. Pagani Design bracelet, on other hand, feels a bit lighter and more rattly, and the links connections are not as refined. You can see how some links are more tight than others. Of course, after a few months it will work itself out, and in isolation without a San Martin bracelet next to it, Pagani Design bracelet looks okay, but still it lacks the refinement compared to San Martin's. Further, if we look close at San Martin's bracelet, the links are actually thicker than on Pagani Design. If we measure them, we can see that the San Martin links are 3.5 mm thick, while the Pagani Designs are 3.2 mm. And then we get to the clasp. San Martin has a well-designed milled scissor clasp with safety lock and double pusher action, which is a pleasure to operate, and it offers a bunch of micro adjustments. The only gripe I have here is the absence of diver extension or any kind of extension for that matter. With Pagani Design, a different story. Yes, also fully milled machine clasp, which looks very good and even has an on-the-fly extension, all of course thanks to iconic design that they try to mimic here. But the execution is really far from ideal. The tolerances are all over the shop. Opening the clasp can be a nail-torturing experience. Again, we normally operate the clasp a few times a day at most, so if used carefully, this one will last for some time. And of course it can be replaced, or the whole bracelet can be replaced altogether. However, the fact remains that in spite of its good looks, for your $85 you will not be getting a quality clasp here. And this is not a criticism by no means. At $85 price point, this is an amazing value-packed timepiece. The fact remains though, do not expect it to be on the same level as San Martin's bracelet. So, after putting all the facts on the table, if you have a hard stop budget of under $100 and only Submariner Homage will do, then Pagani Design still remains an undisputed king of under $85 homages to famous Rolex Submariner, in my personal opinion anyway, just for the sheer value of materials you get for your money. However, if you're willing to save a bit more, at about $200 or with a bunch of discounts and coupons closer to $180, San Martin is a good quality alternative, which will not only less likely annoy you with the random quality control issues, but also will most likely retain its value much better. Just have a look at the second-hand San Martin watches on eBay. San Martin tend to hold their value much better than Pagani Design ones, and I've seen pre-owned Pagani Design watches sold for about 30% of their original price, while San Martin watches on eBay fetch about 2/3 or even higher of their original price, which is not a bad going. I appreciate that we are not talking a great sums of money here. However, if you decide at some point that this watch is not right for you, you have a chance of getting a chunk of your money back, which is always a good thing in my books. So please let us know what are your thoughts on the subject, and if you find this review helpful, hit that like button and of course subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.